Okay, this chapter is about Active Directory. Is it showing? No. Active Directory is the database, the brain of your domain controller. This is how the domain controller manage the authentication, privileges, who can access what, who can access what privilege you have. So this is done through the Active Directory. Okay. Previously in Windows NT, we had something called primary domain controller and we have backup domain controller. In 2019, we have numbers, DC1, DC2. In the Active Directory, you have the multi-master domain controller. Why it's master? Because it's managing all the domains. When you create, when we do inshallah this lab, you are creating, you have one server. You are going to promote this server, give it more power to be a domain controller. يكون المتحكم الرئيسي بالنتورك, domain controller. When it becomes a domain controller, it will be the first domain controller in the forest. I will give you an example. When you plant a tree, وتيجي على الأرض, you plant a tree in it. This is the first tree in the forest, and after that maybe it will be a forest. So this domain could be the first domain in a forest. فإحنا when we install it in the lab, we will call it add a new forest because it's the first domain. And duwati.local is an example from the book. Is the author. Okay. Then you continue with the lab. Here we will do this in the lab, so I'm gonna. Okay, now if we look here, we have this domain. This is a child domain. These are child domains of this one. Okay, this is we are going to cover in the lab. The lab slides we will do in the lab. Like the forest. Let's talk more about the forest. Here I have this domain. Okay, and I have this domain. They both have relation. They have trust relationship. So they are both making a forest. Okay, they make a forest. Although they are different domains. This is UOL, this is HTTP. But this one and this one, these are child domains of this domain. Okay, this is a tree, and this is a tree. Child domain, if I have duwati.local, programming.duwati.local is the child domain. Understood? That's why we call it a child, because it's like a tree. So the database of the Active Directory is called schema. They call it schema. Remember this word. And there can be only one schema in the Active Directory structure. هو العمود الفقري. Schema of the domain controller. The schema is stored in all domain controllers in the Active Directory. Okay. We have schema master and we have domain naming master. Schema master is responsible for performing updates to the Active Directory schema. And the domain naming master, it manages the Active Directory namespace or domain namespace. We have also RID, Relative Identifier, and PDC. RID master takes care of assigning security identifiers. We will talk about SIDs to the domain controller. We will talk about the SIDs later in the next chapter. So these are the roles of the operation master roles. Domain controller. We have schema master. One per forest. You cannot have more. But it's spreading all over the place. Again here, this is the master. Here we have duwati.local. The forest name is Duwati. Okay. And here we have two trees, IT training and Duwati.local. I think we talked about what is the difference between client server and work group. Which one is more scalable? Client server. Work group, when you want to share, if you have at home, let's say you want to share a printer or a file, you just click and share. No security, no control. It works only if you have very small network. Okay. Here we talk about when a computer joins the domain. When you join the domain, you log in, you put your username and password. Okay. Your security account manager, we call it SAM, in the local computer, trust the Active Directory authentication mechanism. On any server, let's say you have one computer. Remember the one we installed? We already have an SAM, and you have username and password. If we join the domain, when we install the domain controller, you are going to join the domain, so your computer will trust the domain. That's why you will join. Okay. And when you join a domain, and there is another domain in the forest, you are also trusted in that other domain. So this is the meaning. We have forest functional level, we have domain functional level. Of course, the forest functional level is, the scope is bigger, and it's covering the whole forest. All right. FFL اللي هو الفورست functional level controls which version of Windows Server can run. All right. Things like that. DFL controls which versions of Windows Server can run in DCs of that domain, and it's only particular about this domain. But in forest, for everybody, for all the other domains. Okay, now we are going to do this slides. This is again namespace. Namespacing, how the naming is done. And we have already studied this. Here we have this forest. We have this tree. This is a child domain of this. Is this a child domain? No, this is a new tree. But they are all in the same forest. Okay, now let's come to sites. Sites. Let's say you are a bank. You have a bank. The bank is opening a branch, and the branch is far away. In that branch, they will have mail server, DNS server, file server. So they need high speed between these servers. So you are going to put these things there on the site. So that's why we call it a site. Okay. So a domain represents the logical topology. The site represents the physical topology because they are connected. See these servers, they are connected with cables in that area, okay? and you need speed for them. Also, for Active Directory, you need to replicate and synchronize directory partitions among all DCs in the forest so that the data is updated. Yani when someone log in, let's say the user changed his password, and then he goes to another location and he's logging in from another location using another server. The information should be there also, should be replicated. Replicated يعني مسخناها, copied. يعني there should be replication and synchronization. Also in the Active Directory, we have objects, we have classes, we have attributes. Okay. So let's say if there is a username, the username is an object. Attributes like first name, what is the last name, telephone, email. Yeah. Okay. Any questions? Microsoft, they have a new technology using Microsoft Passport and Fast ID online. Okay. But we are not going to do a lab on that, unfortunately. To install Active Directory, it will be installed in two major steps. The first step is you are going to add the role. After that, you are going to run a command called promote. This is one of the ways to do it. Yeah, they are explaining this step. Okay, they are explaining the steps which we will do in the lab. It's very straightforward. And once you start the wizard, it's easy. Just next. Okay. Any questions about this chapter? Now we will do this. I told you close the virtual machine. Okay, what is OU? Let's say here we have our campus. OU is a way to organize and administer your objects, your resources in the in the Active Directory. So for instance, here we can have one OU for faculty, one OU for students, one OU for printers, like that. Okay. OU is abbreviation of organizational unit. So here you look here, we have many OUs. This is we have marketing, HR, finance, and so on. So OUs are logical containers holding common objects. Okay, and you can install many objects. You can include many objects in the OU, and you can put an OU inside another OU. We call it nesting. Okay. So here we have 3 OUs, for example. When you install the Microsoft Server DC, you also get default containers. They are installed for you by default because they help the management and the operation of the domain controller. So you don't install them, they are installed by default for you. Okay, understood? You need to know that. These default containers, they are used for upgraded computer accounts, We have also domain controllers is a default controller of the DC. This is created for you by default. Computer is created for you by default. Okay. Lost, found, lost and found, and so on. We have also some hidden default containers. You can also unhide them if you want to look at them, and you can do this through the advanced features. One important fact also, we will do delegation in the lab, is you can delegate the control of an OU. Okay, why? Because it will help you, it will simplify your administration. It will simplify your administration of tasks, things like that. Okay. And if you, let's say you have one site, you want to delegate, like let's say managing the users or managing the printers. فبتعطي توكيل تفويض for another admin to manage that specific task. Okay, understood? Delegation, what it means? We will create a user and group in the next chapter. OU is only about creating OU. Permissions, after we learn about users and groups, then inshallah in the future chapters we will learn about how we give the permissions. Okay, okay, so this is the part. As I told you, it's a small part. Any questions about OUs? So OU, is it a logical or physical? Logic. Logic. No, it's logic. Logic. Okay. Okay, we have another one about users and groups, the one your colleague asked about. So we have accounts and groups. So here we have users. You put the users under groups, then you manage them. It's always better like that. Create groups, put the users in the groups, then manage the groups. Come on. So groups are a collection of user accounts, and the member receives the permission given to the group. And a user can be member of multiple groups, and groups can be members of another group. We call it a group nesting. We have two types of groups: distribution group and security group. Okay. Distribution, this is non-security. It's only created for distribution of information. Security group, this is the one important for us in the lab, because this is the one you use for granting resources, as our colleague asked about granting resources, permissions. The group has a scope. The scope can be local group. Okay, sorry, it will be domain local, or global group, or universal group. This is the scope of the domain. And I'll show you how we configure it. So this is the members can be, what can be member of domain local group. If you can see here, we can have users, we can have computers, global groups, universal groups, and domain local groups from the same domain. In the global group, we are limited to the same domain. You have to remember that. same domain. The universal you can have from any domain in the forest or other universal groups. Again, we have also some default groups created for us when you install DC, or when you add a role, let's say DHCP, or you add DNS. Okay. So this you can see it depending on what you have installed. These are some examples here. Let's continue. Group listing, we have already mentioned the group listing. You have a group inside a group. And this is the order, please. This is important. This is the order of permissions. First, you do domain local, and then you create a universal group, and then you have the global group in each domain. Okay. So first you create a global group in each domain that contains all users needing access to the enterprise database, for example. Then you create a universal group in the parent domain, include each location's global group. And this one here, you put it inside the universal group. Then this universal group, you add it to the required domain local group. Special entities, they exist on all computers running Windows 2019 or 12. This is a mistake. But they are not groups because you cannot create them or delete them. Okay, and they do not appear as manageable objects. Let's see some examples of them. These are how you can see them. These are some examples of them. Please have a look at it. You see, they are very specific. For example, creator owner. You don't create it, it's by itself. The account for the user who created or took ownership of a resource. Okay. Interactive, all users who are currently logged on locally or through a remote desktop connection, and so on. Converting groups, a group functions change, you might also need to change its scope or its type. So how we do this, if you come here, this is the group. We have group scope, group type. You see, we will do this in the lab. You see, if you want to change the group type, simply you put the tick here. Instead of security, make it distribution. I don't know if it's clear or not. Let me make it bigger. Oh. You see this one, security. If I want to make it distribution, I put the dot here. Same thing with the scope. Now it is domain local. If I want to change it, then I will need to put the dot where I want to change it to. Okay. Is it clear? Any questions? Any question? Question, if I delete a group, are the users inside the group deleted? No, of course not. Of course not. Right. If I have a group, let's say I named it finance, and I assign some permissions to this group. Then I deleted the group. Then I created another group with the same name, finance. Does the new finance will have the same permissions of the old one? Because they will have different identity. Okay, they will have different identity. Very good. Okay, please read the summary. Ask me if you have a question. I will stop there.